The Vatican is a closed city-state with a population of about 2,000 people. Since time immemorial, this place has been shrouded in myths and legends. It is here that archives are kept that are inaccessible to ordinary people. Only top officials and leaders of states get here, and only by invitation. But what can be stored at first glance in these harmless books? And why is this close attention from the authorities? Let's figure it out. The safest and most strictly guarded place in the world is the Vatican. I think almost everyone has heard of its library, but few have gotten to the truth, studying its ins and outs. Throughout its existence, which is no more and no less than almost 5 centuries, only a few have seen these archives. And even according to eyewitnesses, a strange picture emerges. As with most megaliths on the planet, the history of the Vatican's appearance raises a lot of questions. If you are at least a little bit friendly with logic and believe your eyes, and not the tales of historians. Let's take, for example, St. Peter's Basilica. It is officially stated that the basilica was built from 1506 to 1626. In fact, all of Rome is made using the same technologies, but some buildings are presented as ultra-ancient, from several hundred to several thousand years old, while others were supposedly made in the last century, but for some reason they have the same technologies and materials. Doesn't this seem strange to you? For example, the Roman Pantheon is 2,000 years old according to the official version, and the Vittoriano Palace is a little over 100, but the traces of formwork on their walls are the same. For example, look at how we are shown the construction of the obelisk in the center of the square. We pay special attention to the fact that the engravings show different circumstances and decorations. The obelisk is made of granite, allegedly brought all the way from Egypt. This thing weighs 331 tons. It is stated that the process of moving and lifting took 37 days. And imagine this engineering feat was accomplished by the joint efforts of 900 men and 75 horses. Other sources say there were more than 140 horses. And this is with the obelisk weighing more than 100 tons. That is about 300 kilograms per man-horse, which sounds unrealistic. They are seriously trying to convince us that a team of cyborgs on horses, several hundred people in number, manually lifted such a colossus with ropes and winches. It is possible, of course, but imagine what kind of boat and cart would be needed to transport this thing. By the way, some obelisks were brought by angels, as clearly shown here, so you shouldn't be too surprised. But seriously, was it possible to do this using the methods that historians tell us about? But this is only a visual image, so what is inside? And inside there is a library, films were made about it, and books were written, but most of what is said there is just fantasy. However, there is still some truth. How do we know this? From time to time, the Vatican decides that it is time to reveal to people the truth about the contents of this or that document. Of course, this depends only on the global attitude to the subject in order to cause or not to cause a violent reaction to the discovery of the truth. After all, the Vatican archives themselves have been the main intriguing element of history for many years, and the Vatican itself has long been hiding the knowledge that the world is not yet ready for. After all, just imagine if everything we are taught was just an excellent plan on the part of those higher up, or how the world will change after learning that the most important information about the Christian faith, which we have sacredly believed to this day, will turn out to be distorted. According to the writer Michael Bagan, the story of Christ could have been somewhat different from the one we know. According to his version, the Messiah lived for many years after his supposed death in 33 AD. Presumably, Jesus managed to avoid execution by making a deal with Pontius Pilate. The fact is that it was extremely important for Rome that Christ could force his numerous followers to pay a tax. The best solution that could help implement the conceived plan was precisely crucifixion. According to the writer, he has no evidence, but the Vatican certainly has it. These assumptions may well be justified after all. The Vatican is the largest stronghold of Christianity in the world and one of the oldest currently existing institutions in the world. According to researchers, all these artifacts are of the highest religious value, and therefore a special secret room in the archive has been allocated for them. Some are also convinced that the Vatican holds at least one real image of Jesus' appearance. If this is actually true one day, then the question of why this information was so carefully kept secret for so long remains unknown. Judge for yourself how much research and evidence could have been provided if you had an idea of what Christ was like. After all, there is no information anywhere about how the life of the Almighty proceeded from childhood to 30 years old. Perhaps he could have had a family. The famous director Ron Howard, who made the sensational film The Da Vinci Code, highlights the interesting facts that Christ has offspring and this is kept secret. But if the public learns the truth, the consequences for the church will be catastrophic. Of course, this is just a theory, and there is no evidence for this yet. The only question is, why then are the Vatican archives, which were founded in 1611 by Pope Paul V, an ultra-secure repository for the most ancient and valuable documents of the Church? Access to the archives has always been limited. Even today, only Vatican officials and scientists are allowed inside. Moreover, you can only get into the Vatican archives with a letter of recommendation, and only a couple of people are allowed in there per year. Moreover, scientists must specify exactly what documents they need, and this is despite the fact that they do not even know exactly what is inside the archives. Once on February 28, 2014, in the program Man and Law, the host Alexei Pimanov showed a photo that one of his friends took in the Vatican Library. It depicted a map of the Etruscan state, a small patch on the western coast of the Apennine Peninsula. There is nothing surprising in this. The Etruscans lived in Italy much earlier than the Italians themselves. And then they left the peninsula somewhere to the northeast. The Vatican map showed exactly where. To the northeast of Italy, one huge state was depicted, Etruria. It was drawn in much the same way as in the Middle Ages. Europeans drew the unknown and terrible Tartaria. Here is the border of the Oikumene, and here is an unknown emptiness inhabited by incomprehensible Etruscans. Moreover, the Italians themselves do not deny. Rome was indeed founded not by the Romans, but by the Etruscans, and they gave Rome their architecture and infrastructure, including baths and viaducts supplying the city with water. The Etruscans gave Rome their rights and their laws. Inscriptions in Etruscan were found practically all over Italy, but the local saying was, Etruscan is illegible. But the scientist Sebastiano Ciampi devoted his life to reading these inscriptions. He tried to decipher them using Egyptian, Hebrew, Celtic, and even Chinese, but to no avail. One day he found himself in Siberia, and having studied the local language, he suddenly discovered that the inscriptions in Etruscan were not so unreadable. Ciampi hurried to share his findings with his colleagues, but was immediately reprimanded. They explained to him that the Slavs did not exist before the 6th century. This means that it is still impossible to read the Etruscan script. Only in Church Slavonic such reduction is still found. Some Etruscan letters are mirrored relative to their modern spelling. And it turns out that the Etruscans have a direct relationship with the Vatican. But who are they? The Etruscans? Although the Vatican specializes in preserving ancient facts, it also has information about modern technologies. Chronicles, strange mechanisms, inconvenient photographs of the Pope, all this takes place. And sooner or later it comes to the masses. This topic touched me so much that I began to collect various records from archives, old photographs, talk to people who studied this matter in real life, and they allowed me to share their work. Therefore, I can proudly say that there is something to look at and to think about why all this was done many centuries ago. Did you know that the Vatican has its own specialized observatory, and not just any ordinary one, but a real masterpiece of both architecture and research capabilities? Although the Vatican is called ancient, it is full of modern technologies that are not available even in large countries of the world. The Church regularly holds conferences on astrobiology and also actively uses the Vatican Observatory to find planets similar to Earth. Many believe that this is just a cover because the Vatican has long known about alien civilizations and keeps the secret of their existence in its archives. After several years of research, strange skulls with elongated heads and small faces, reminiscent of aliens, settled in the archives. Reality or fiction, I think we can only guess. But the fact that the Vatican is not as simple as it seems remains an undeniable fact, even to this day. And what do you think? Does this man have anything to hide?